Hi, it's Paula from Pola Quilting. Welcome back to my channel. These are the blocks I've made in my last full tutorial. You remember we've been working on gentle waves, and I did say you can use those blocks as they are to make an absolutely gorgeous quilt, but this is part of my bigger project, and now the pattern is going to be available at my shop. You can download it for free, so it will give you all the dimensions and the placements and everything else. It's free, but if you feel like you'd like to support my work, you've got few options. You can donate some money via super thanks on YouTube, or perhaps you would like to buy me a tea, coffee or lunch using link on my website. It's up to you. Anyway, let's get started. So those wavy blocks here, we've got them already, and so we will focus on the remaining ones. I'm working with the fabrics I've got already. I'm not buying anything. I want to kind of sew out my sewing room before I go and buy some more fabrics. So if you are in the similar situation, then you might need to get creative with the fabrics and colors and placements. So those block here, those like full purple one, I was planning to use the same fabric, which is this one, and I only had the 3 pieces which were more or less the size of a bit bigger than the fat quilter. So what I had to do is I have stitched few together to create enough blocks. So you can see there's a stitch here. So some of them are plain, some of them are stitched. To be fair, once you quilt it, you won't see it. So I've got enough to make those outside ones, but for the middle, I didn't have enough fabric. So I made this instead. So those are leftovers from that fabric, and this fabric is then used for the sections here. Not even all of them, just the one with the stars. So you kind of have to work with what you've got. So we already got all of those like a main blocks ready. There's nothing complicated here. If I had enough fabric, I would have just had a plain square here in the middle as well. But like I said, you have to get creative if you don't have enough. So let's focus on the other parts. So we will work with the star legs here and those pieces here all around. So those sections here, the base of that rectangle is 8.5 by 12.5. So that's a big rectangle we'll be working from. So that's this fabric. I've got 4 of them for 4 section of the legs, and then I've got red, which is 8.5 by 8.5. You don't have to remember all of those dimensions because they are going to be on the pattern, which are going to create my star leg, but we will also use the second part of it when we finish for another part of the pattern. So that's one. And also here I had to be creative because I've run out of that red and I didn't want to add another kind of color or shade of the red. I could have, but I was missing just 2, so I stitched some leftovers of that fabric to have enough. So I will use what I've got. So let's get started with that piece first, and then we'll go through the remaining parts of the pattern. Okay, so for our star legs, you want to take a square, put it on the left side up, and we're gonna draw a line from top to bottom on diagonal, and then I will draw a second line below it, because like I've mentioned, we will use that second part of the half square triangle in another part of the design. So I will do that to all of my squares first. Normally with the smaller squares I would just eyeball it but with big pieces like that you really would like make a line just to guide you, make it as straight as possible. Okay, so my squares are marked. I've got my big rectangles for my star legs. I've got 1/4 inch foot here, but I will change it just to standard now with this piecing. I mean, you can use 1/4 if you have it there and you don't want to change it, but it's just going to be a little bit easier if it is. So I will stitch first on that top line, which is on diagonal from top to bottom, and then I'll go back and stitch here. And you definitely would like to chain piece that work so you don't have to kind of cut the thread in between. Okay, so I've put my first leg on. As you can see, I've chain pieced everything to save the time. Now we need to cut it in between the lines and take the bigger piece to the iron to open it up. So in this step you can either use rotary cutter to cut your pieces or use the scissors. Either way is fine. I'm guessing rotary cutter will be a bit quicker because it's a big piece, but either method will work. Here you go. So that we will keep for the next part of the pattern, and this is our first leg. So like I said, I will take it to the iron. What I like to do with the half square triangles, because obviously some of it is now on bias, so you may like to stretch. I like to kind of do it with my fingers first, place it, not push it too much, just place it nicely, and then when I take it to the iron I can just put the iron on top of it. I also like to use a little bit of starch, spray starch. I've got a good starch link. If you are interested, I will link it in the description below. I've got my star legs back. I've ironed them out. I use some starch, like I said, so that kind of bias will not move that much. So I've got my second square, and I will put it on top to stitch through again. And how you want to place it with that second line towards that way, if that's the way you lay it out for sewing, as I did. So when you do the first stitching, you will have that shape of the star leg. So just put it down, and I will again stitch once, and then I will turn around and do the second stitching on the other side. You can definitely use pins here to hold the pieces in place if you need to. I just try to align them straight away. Okay, now I just need to repeat the step that I will cut the pieces in between, take it to the iron board and iron out. So I'm ready to add other pieces. I don't know if you noticed in the previous cutting I was using my normal cutter, and I was struggling really to go through the layers because I forgot that I actually had a super duper titanium blades now in my smaller cutter. Somebody sent me them to test them and give the feedback on them, so I've started it with the last tutorial and I'm carrying on. So if they are going to be good, I will provide you feedback, and I will also provide you with the link where you can purchase them if you are based in United States. So let's get cracking. Like I said, the same step, cutting in between, taking to the iron board, using a little bit of starch, make them nice and flat, and we'll come back for the next step. So here are my legs already now nicely stitched, and idea is that before we start putting the quilt together, we bring all the section to the 12.5 inch size, so it's easier than just lay that quilt out and just stitch it together like you would have just, you know, simple blocks. So we are at the leg, so we need to add that piece at the top, which will bring the leg to 12.5 inch square. So this, because this is 8.5, this is going to be 4.5 just strip. I've used the plain fabric, but by all means you can use some scrap, some, you know, maybe you have something done as a crumb. You can just put together anything really to make it up, whatever fits with the colors you're making your quilt with. So I've got those yellow pieces here, and it is as easy as stitch those two pieces together that way. So you can definitely chain piece all of that. So I will just put a pin on those to keep, like, you know, which side I need to pin them on. Then I will plan the rest of the block so I can chain piece even more. Okay, so this stack is now ready to be chain pieced, and I can just put it aside for now. And let's have a look at the last part of the block, which is this one. So this block is built from 4 pieces. The middle square, the bigger square is 8.5 inch. So those are my 8.5 inch squares. The green pieces are 4.5 by 8.5, so they will go on both sides of the square. And then the last piece we will make from the remainder of the legs. So I need to square it up to 4.5 inch. If you have 4.5 inch square ruler, that's great, you can do it with that. But if you don't use any size of the ruler, you may have a line which will be on the diagonal, which you could use to do that. Mine doesn't. If you have, it would have been that much easier. But for now, I'm just aligning here, so I am guided by that middle section to make sure I've got the middle line straight. I'm not worrying about the size of it yet, and as you can see, those squares are much bigger than 4.5 inches, so I really cannot go wrong with that one, because I will definitely not miss the size. So one side is nice and straight. So here, because I'm doing only 4 blocks, I won't bother, but what you could do is you could kind of mark yourself here with a piece of tape where that 4.5 inch is on your ruler, and then kind of find that X spot and align the X spot here, the tip of the ruler there, and that's where you are with the 4.5 inch. So I will just do it without it. So I'm just aligning 4.5 inch dimension here, 4.5 inch dimension here, and when they meet, that's where the cut is going to be. And I'm trying to cut it nice and straight here, because this is quite a nice piece which I could possibly use for something else. So that goes to my scrap box, and I just do the same thing to other 4 triangles, half square triangles. Okay, so you will have 8 of those half square triangles after you've done your star legs, but we only need 4 for those corners here. Now they are big enough to be used in any other project. You can square them up to whatever you need, or if you perhaps decide that you would like to make a border to this quilt, then you can use them again in the corners and make some nice border there with either scraps or just one kind of strip. It depends what you've got, but we've got what we need from this one. And what I want to do is build that block. Now you have to decide which way you would like to go with your kind of design. It can be this way, this way, this way, this way, whichever you want to go with, it's going to be fine. I think I would like to go away out with that red one, because there's the star leg which will be here. To be fair, it's not going to be linked anywhere, it can be either way, so your decision making here now how you want to go about it. But I want my greens on the sides from that part, and then my purple goes in the middle again here, and I will lay them out all in kind of on top of each other, all of those 4 blocks we need, because again I will just chain piece everything, so it's just going to be easier. And also I don't later need to remember which way I wanted to each piece to go. Makes, you know, life a little bit easier. And all of those will go in here. So let's just move on to the machine and start stitching everything. So I'll just put this one pile on top of it as well for chain piecing, and I can just move it to the sewing. For this part of the project I definitely want to put my 1/4 inch foot now, to be able to stitch it together properly. And I will start with those, because this is just one straight stitch to go. Okay, we're getting to the second block, and I will just take first 2 pieces from the top and stitch all of them in one go, and then I will do the same with the bottom part of the block. Okay, I finished everything for this pass, so my star legs are now ready. I can move them away, take them to iron. Now here I will just cut them and just place them back on the on my table here as they were kind of sewn. I will leave the last one still on the machine, not breaking the thread there. But what I can do is now take the top and the bottom of that block and keep chain piecing, and you just want to nest that one seam here, whichever you want. I'm not fussed with the seams. As far as the quilt is flat, it really doesn't matter which way the seam is go, or even if they are kind of a little bit doubled up somewhere. Now I can take the last one from this side, add it to the pile, and just finish off all of my blocks in one go. Okay, so I can just take it to the iron board, iron all of my blocks flat. Again, I'm not worried about that much which way the seams are going. If I have to move the seams later, I will. I just want to have a nice flat blocks to work with, and we're gonna be ready to put the whole quilt together. So my design board is not big enough to put it all together, but I should be able to put first kind of columns so you can see how it goes. So one will be missing on the right hand side. You just refer to the pattern for the layout for those, and then we will just quickly sew it together. So for chain piecing the whole quilt, I've stacked first and second column. So this top is this square, this top is this square. I will chain piece all of those sections, and then I will bring further columns to add to it. Now before I sew, I will just give you a final tip about those blocks. So they are big blocks, and some of them are built from smaller parts, and whenever you do that, the chance is that you might be off somewhere on the seams and those blocks did not come up 12.5 inches. If you have a big difference in the size of the blocks, because obviously this is just a square, but some of the other blocks are going to be, you know, built from smaller pieces. So if you are very far off, like more than, let's say, 1/4 of the inch on the sizes, because that you can lose in the seam allowances, square them all up again. Square them all up to the size whatever you need to make them all even. That will help you to piece that quilt together and make it nice flat top. You might be off a little bit somewhere in some junctions here, you know, when those rectangles are meeting, but once you wash that quilt, once that quilt will wrinkle, you will not notice it, and your piecing exact matching squares is going to be much easier than kind of fighting with, oh, I need to, you know, lose something here or add something there in the seam allowances. So just a small tip there, if your piecing is not yet that very precise. Okay, so I've sewn it all. Before I take it back kind of and push it down to start with the sewing, I'll bring my third column here and I'll add it to the first two. So this is the first part, or first time when I would like to perhaps see how my seam here at the bottom was done. So he was facing up, and this one is facing up as well. So choice, I can either put it down and re-iron later when I finish, or keep it up. Either way it's going to be fine, so you can decide which way you want to go with this piece here. I've decided to leave it up because there's quite a bulk of fabric here from that star leg, so either way it's going to be a little bit thicker there, so there's no point of changing direction of the seam. I will now add column 4 and 5 exactly the same way, and then I will show you how I finish the quilt sewing the other direction. I finished stitching all of my columns, and now I can turn it around, and those columns now create in rows which I need to put together. So when you're sewing the first two, you just want to nest the junctions of each of the 12.5-inch blocks, and whichever they go, they are fine. When you then put this sewn piece on top of the next one, you want to see which way the seams were going to make sure you can nest the other one correctly. So let's just quickly do first two so I can show you what I mean by that. Okay, so first two rows or columns, however you want to call it now, are done. So that piece which is done, I want to have on top, so I can clearly see which way those seams are going, so I don't have to kind of guess how to nest the next part. Now I have not kind of divided those columns or rows to put it away. I'm still using those threads here to hold them in place, but if you feel like it's too much bulk for you to work with, by all means, before you start sewing the rows together now, cut it between, put it on your design board or somewhere on the floor, and just work with one slice at a time just to make it easier. So if I had it cut it all around, I would have had those two pieces sewn together, and then I would just take this one row to add it in. The rest of here would not be here yet. But the method of this sewn piece to put on top, that remains either way. So now I can see that seam here has been placed up on that first junction, so that means here I want to have it up, so the piece under should go down with the seam to nest them. And I will just check it every time now I am at the junction moving on to make sure they do nest. However, don't overthink that step either. If it doesn't nest properly, just sew it in. Like I've mentioned, once it's washed and crinkled, all of those small mismatches, they are just going to disappear. And also, you know, finish is better than not finish and dwelled on. So just crack on, finish your quilt, and either enjoy it yourself or give it to somebody else who will enjoy your work. I will finish sewing all of that quilt. I won't be yet kind of sandwiching it yet to finish to the very end. So if you like to see how I finish my quilt in total, please make sure you're watching all other tutorials to the end, because every now and then when I finish quilt, I post some pictures at the end of those tutorials. But I will show you how that quilt looks when it's all ironed out, when it's sewn together. I hope you all enjoyed this tutorial and this pattern, which I have called Weaving with Stars. I have placed it under a Magic Numbers playlist because it is based on the same principle. I also consider this pattern somewhat scrappy. I haven't bought any fabric to complete this project. All of it was shopped from my stash, and though I were using bigger pieces like this ones to make it in the full pattern, you could make a nice crumb blocks to replace those ones, so you can make it as scrappy as you like. Link to my website where this pattern is available is in the description below. You can head there and download it for free. I would be very grateful if you subscribe to the website as well, and if there's anything new coming out there, whether the item, a blog item, tutorial, you will be immediately notified. If you are on Instagram, you can follow me on Pola Quilting, or you can also share whatever patterns you've used from my tutorials and put the hashtag Pola Quilting with friends all together, and that's my hashtag I'm using for my work, so I'll be very happy to see what you come up with your own fabric stash. If you are on the Facebook, there is a Facebook group page called Pola Quilting with Friends. The same purpose, come and share what you have made from my tutorials. If you would like to know what I'm using during my sewing adventures, I have created a shopping list both on UK and USA markets. All the links to all of the mentioned medias are in the description below. This is my last full tutorial in this year. I hope you will enjoy this quick show of the pictures from this pattern. I will share a few shorter tutorials still in the next coming few weeks, but I will resume to full speed from mid-January. I'm just taking this time to chill out with my family. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you all for sticking with me so far, for lovely feedback, comments, for sharing my tutorials with your friends, for using super thanks on YouTube or buying virtual coffee to your lunch on my website. Your wonderful support keeps me going from project to project. There's more and more and more to come, so I hope you will carry on sticking with me and watching me. I wish you all wonderful holidays, and to those who celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas and lots of blessings for New Year. Thank you for joining, thank you for watching, and see you next time.